Welcome to Red Stars Report, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the latest news and commentary on all things Chicago Red Stars. I'm your host, LT.
And I'm your co-host, Liz.
And this week, Liz and I are joined by our good friend and one of the original members of the Red Stars Report community, Jules. Welcome to the show, Jules.
Hi, very happy to be here. Thank you both for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know that we promised the community international coverage with Liz hosting this week during the break for the from the Red Stars, but it turns out that the club wanted to throw any plans that we had out the window by changing their name and logo entirely for the 2025 season. The Chicago Red Stars will start 2025 NWSL season as Chicago Stars FC. I will put their new logo up on the screen so everyone can look at it throughout the episode. This is the first major rebrand by the team since its founding almost 19 years ago. Today, we bring you sort of three perspectives on this news. That is why Jules is joining us today as another person to talk about this, talk us, through this, and give a little different perspective on it than Liz and I have. So we'll go into details on the logo change and what the club had to say about it in a little bit. But first, let's just start off with our thoughts. And we'll start with you, Jules, as our guest. What do you think about
Oh,
the
I guess you go
change
first.
of the name and the logo?
Um, I love it. I'm starting off the gate with I love it, which is immediately going to put me at odds with like the majority of the community. But I think it's great. I think that sort of charting a path forward is a really smart decision for the club to do. I think that the design of the logo looks clean and new, and also still sort of has that iconic Chicago star that is red at the center of it. Which I think they did a really solid job of making a logo that speaks to where this club can go while still sort of keeping that Red Stars history. I can elaborate more on sort of how exactly I think they did that and why I find it satisfying how they did. But I think given their goals were new look, moving towards sort of this new identity with the new ownership and a new hopeful relationship with the city and maybe a hopefully new venue at some point. While still maintaining some of that like classic Red Stars identity, founding member of the NWSL, member of God, I can't, was it the I can't
WPS.
remember. Thank you, WPS beforehand. Like I think if that was their goal, which they've said it was, they did a really solid job at it.
And Liz, the I hope when we discussed this throughout the week, we talked about you hopefully by the time we record maintaining your fire for this. So have you maintained your fire for this, or have you gone towards the middle like I am?
I don't know. It's
Sounds like the middle.
probably the middle. I mean, I can't get fiery if you really want me to. I mean, I could get fiery about it. I like speaking of the WPS, like that's why I don't like the change because as somebody that has been a fan of the team since its inception, it hurts my heart because it's like that's who they are, like at the core, like they're an original team, and it stinks to like change that because they still are that original team. So to associate with like to change from the Red Stars to Chicago Stars FC, I can't even say it because it's so weird in
It'll
my
take a
head.
bit to roll off the tongue.
Um, but to change to that, I get it. I get why they did it. I get that they felt like they had to move away from they wanted to get out of the past. But in my personal opinion, if they really, really wanted to do that, they should have changed the entire thing. Complete change. Don't like pull a word here and add a couple words here and then give it a new shiny logo and then say, okay, here you go. I get trying to maintain that, but I would rather they just have kept it or changed it entirely. The middle ground for me is where I'm kind of struggling with it. And I'm sure that eventually I'm going to get over it. And I'm still going to love the team no matter what. I'm not going to like jump ship and go become a KC fan or something like that. And or a Boss Nation.
Oh, geez. We didn't even get to talk about that, really.
We did not even get to talk about
Uh,
that. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at just to start off the conversation. I like that they were one of the original clubs, and I like that they kept that throughout the different leagues that they've been in, and now they're not. And so it kind of stinks, but I just want a new stadium, please.
Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be nice. So you think they should have gone more in like the Gotham direction of just total rebrand, total new identity. Where I think about when I think about Gotham's rebrand is obviously like Sky Blue was a little bit not
Awful.
yeah
Horrendous.
not where they wanted to be identity wise, and Gotham obviously has completely changed anyone's perspective on that club, and they go on and win a championship. It's like that's Gotham. But then I always think like there are players that we know very well, like Sam Kerr or Mal Swanson, like players who have played for Sky Blue,
Mhm.
where you would technically have to say nowadays, like they used to play for Gotham before they were Gotham. Like it kind of becomes a little interesting history wise when I think of that. And I just don't want the Red Stars to kind of become something like that, like these
Mhm.
legacy players that we all know with the Red Stars. I would hate in, several years for people just to think of the Red Stars as a club that maybe doesn't even exist anymore, and is just, this is a different club now, so that history's kind of gone. So I kind of understand the keeping it close with just changing to stars. And obviously, where I sort of sit in the middle with this is the biggest thing with the ownership change that had me worried was the leaving Chicago before the Ricketts even
Mhm.
purchased the club. And the fact that Laura Ricketts purchased the
Yeah.
club and dedicated herself to keeping the club within the city and keeping it Chicago so it could become Chicago Stars FC and not some other city or state's name. That was more important to me than a logo or a name change.
I still hate it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, a thing that I think, regardless of, just to quickly touch on the Gotham thing and the continuity thing, Gotham was also in a really impossible place because they had, like, Sky Blue was so branded as a Jersey team. And even then, kind of a confusingly Jersey team because Sky Blue is meaningless. That doesn't mean shit. Um, the sky is blue everywhere. That's one of like the universal things of being a person. But part of that change was to try and bring in the New York market into it, and so it's just very hard to find the continuity. Chicago had the advantage that like and will maintain this advantage of like Sam Kerr played for Chicago, and unless rather the team leaves the city, which it doesn't seem like it's going to do anytime soon, there I think you maintain some of that continuity. That said, like I think having, to your point, keeping that stars in the name does tie it to the does tie it to sort of the decade plus of history. I think it makes it feel more like they're trying to reimagine and re-understand what this team is, as opposed to try and fully remake the team in the way Gotham did. The other thing, not to talk about Gotham for too long, but the other thing that I will give Gotham a lot of credit for, and I think is kind of the goal here, is like you said, like Gotham not only was able to like weigh up sort of their playing quality and a bunch of other things that they brought in around that change, but they did really, really dramatically increase their sort of the size of the market and the market that they had in New York. Like that change, which was coupled with a bunch more sort of marketing and advertisements throughout the city of New York. Like there have been times that Times Square has had giant, giant billboards of Gotham FC. And those coupled together made it feel like this sort of flashy new thing and did in the end, like Gotham has a much bigger fan base than they had. Sky Blue had a worse fan base in terms of numbers, or so I guess not a worse fan base, but a worse turnout than we did, and now they don't. And I think it's not easy to get out to Red Bull. I've done it several times. It's doable. There's a train, which gives it a huge leg up on us, but it's still not an easy thing to do. But I do think a lot of their sort of moderate success that they've found in just getting asses in seats, that comes from that rebrand.
Yeah, and even just like from a media perspective, when the club announced the name change, the new logo, I mean, they were in, the New York Times, the Washington Post. There were, news outlets all the way across the country in LA, doing coverage on this. Like the Red Stars have, for the last several years, been a club that doesn't see a whole lot of turnout, doesn't have this big connection with the city that people who are huge fans of this club would want it to have. And perhaps this kind of change with a name and a logo can bring in the new people that they hope for. It certainly is getting the coverage, negative or positive, to the point that more people have eyes on this club than they have in a while. Usually when the eyes are on this club, it's some kind of scandal or just incredibly negative news to talk about. And this seems more maybe like 50 50 60 40 sort of, from what I've seen. And the only thing that, like, when I saw the change happen, that really just sort of, not necessarily like bothered me, but just, I was just like, come on, was the change of the name. Like, there's the two things is just stars, I just think is very simple, very boring to me. Like, I understand you wanted to sort of keep that connection to the past, and that's the word that you would pick, I guess, to keep that connection. But there are so many teams across all sports that are named the Stars. Like, it becomes so not unique to Chicago. And then FC, I think, is a interesting choice as always for a club in the United States, because we don't call it football here, and yet we want to go and be a football club for some reason.
Yeah, I just don't know if the name change has the same grab as Gotham did to use them, because we're kind of using them
Well,
because
everyone
they're a
loves
solid.
Batman.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like they went with a really, really like flashy type
Mhm.
of name change. Their color scheme change, like super flashy. Like that's a very, to me, it's appealing to the eye, I guess, is the way to look at it. I like that color. Not saying Chicago's colors are bad. I also like our colors. They're very, very good. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that their whole change from what they had with Sky Blue is now like it's better. Angel City also, I know they're just a new team, but they are also very good at all of their
Incredible.
marketing things. And I don't even like them. Do not care for them at all. But the way they market their club, their color scheme, their name, fantastic. But again, they're an FC as well. Um, so, um, how many are there FCs? That's just a random question here. Gotham
uh,
is
three.
Gotham.
Angel City.
Yeah, the Rain are, Angel City are, Wave are.
Yeah.
Is Portland?
Um,
No. Yes.
Mm-mm,
no,
I don't
Portland
think so.
doesn't. Is Utah?
Who even
I don't
knows? What
know.
is Utah?
I
That's the
mean,
question. Is
not
Utah. I have a lot of issues with Utah's branding. That's a separate conversation.
Per Portland's Twitter page, they are Portland Thorns FC.
Huh.
Huh.
Um,
There's a lot of
Interesting.
FCs out there.
I guess,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I guess it's just the way of the sport, but
Hmm.
like, I don't know, a club in Europe is so community oriented and like so
You
ingrained
grow up
in,
in it.
yeah, in everything that
Hmm.
this, like the
Yeah.
city has to offer. Like that's where that foundation started. And it
Hmm.
just that doesn't appeal to me in the
Yeah.
uh American sense of it, because the cities are so huge and not every single person is like a diehard soccer fan in this country. Like
Hmm.
we're very vastly outnumbered when it comes
Hmm.
to the other sports around here. But like that was just one part of the name. I guess it just makes it like, I highly doubt, just like we just discussed, that there are clubs in this league that have FC in their title, but no one ever really says it. So it'll probably end up being that way. I'm
We
not
should have
quite
known
sure.
it. PTFC. Why did they chant that all the time at their
Oh yeah,
games?
they
Why did I
do.
not
Oh,
think of
do they?
that?
I'm
Oh
sure you're
Yeah.
yeah.
right.
Why would you know? Why would you? How many Portland games are you watching?
I watch as many NWSL games
Yeah,
as
I
I
know.
possibly can. But
I try to avoid
yeah.
Portland from a personal hatred.
Well, same, but I try. I mean, I watch them lose. I hate watch them, I guess is what I'm doing.
What?
So
So
my
when it?
hot take is,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go
my
ahead,
hot
Jules.
take is that we should have gone the way that some of the MLS teams in like Florida go with CF, given how much we were leaning into the Spanish with the rebrand,
Oh
which
yeah.
that I will say was done very weirdly.
Yes.
I do not understand. Like, I understand the leaning into the Spanish. I think that's great. I think we do that plenty, and I think we should continue to do that. I think the way that they did that in the rebrand with like randomly translating words was weird. I didn't get that. But I do appreciate trying to like really center that in the team's identity, I guess.
Yeah, that
Could
is
have
a
gone further.
huge part of the culture in Chicago, is that
Hmm.
community. So like I understand leaning in that direction. But like you said, just the way they sort of did it with like this random word Spanglish sort of stuff in the marketing was a little strange. I guess it was only on like their socials. They didn't really do it that much in like the actual marketing of the actual rebrand, which I will give them props for the actual marketing of it. Like this whole scavenger hunt, like looking for the logo across the whole city. They hired a local artist to put up posters around the city and stuff. So like that, like leaning into that stuff, I think they did a
Hmm.
really, really good job of that. Because obviously there'll be even more to come when they actually change their name in 2025. I like right now they've sort of obviously had to go back to the Red Stars because
Hmm.
that's who they are currently, and that's who they'll be for the next few weeks. But the on even on the marketing standpoint for just like the rebrand in general, changing the name, changing the logo, I thought it was a little odd that they chose two marketing firms, one from New York and one from
Hmm.
LA, to do this rebrand. Like
Yeah.
there are wonderful marketing companies in Chicago that I feel like could have had a lot more of a sense of what Chicago is and
Hmm.
what this club could become if they just talked to the people in Chicago
Hmm.
and not outside sources. I understand that the new marketing director for Chicago is not from Chicago. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure she has lived there for a little bit because of her connections to the women's national team in U.S. soccer, because that's where they were headquartered. But I really would have just liked a lot more input from Chicago than outside Chicago.
I agree. That's why I have a hard time with the name change because the name was decided by the fans. They
Yeah.
did a vote on what the name should be. They didn't do that obviously here. They just changed it. And
Mhm.
but yeah, again, I'm not from Chicago. I don't know everything there is about Chicago myself, so it'd be hard for me to do any sort of marketing thing. But I think I know a little bit more about it than somebody from LA or New York. But it's just one of those things where it's tough because I think again, you're talking about wanting to keep it in the city. Like we know that they're going to do that, but why can't we keep the marketing in the city? Why
Mhm.
can't we do it would have been super cool if they would have done like a women's marketing firm doing the rebrand for the Red Stars, support women, all of that sort of thing. Like do something in that regard. But that's why I think part of it fell flat. I did appreciate the attempt with bringing in the Spanish community. I think there should be more of that. The Hispanic community is really important, obviously, in the Chicago area and Illinois, and in the Midwest in general. So I think that that is a good call, and I hope that they push that and pursue that a little bit further because I think that there are people that probably don't even know the Red Stars exist,
Yeah.
and if they did, they would probably come to games. So I think that pursuing that would be a great place to start to get people to come because that obviously the Hispanic community they love soccer, so bring them in.
The hardest away game I've ever cheered was at SeatGeek against oh, who was it? Guadalajara. Um,
Oh yeah, that was
we were home, but that doesn't mean my little drum and I weren't playing against an entire crowd of people coming to support Guadalajara. There are fans who will come see games.
yeah. I mean, even think about when they played the Mexican national team a couple years
Mhm.
ago. Like the stadium was just like such a great atmosphere that the Red Stars as
Yeah.
just a club cannot replicate on their
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so I do think it was very important to sort of appeal to that community.
Mhm.
And I mean, you look at when different national teams come and play for or at Soldier Field, like they're those the stadium is filled and the environment is crazy. Even just look at Mexican Independence Day when Chicago is like impossible to even step foot into. So I thought that was so important for the club to do. I think they executed it oddly, but I think it's the right direction for the
Mhm.
club. Now just the logo in general,
Mhm.
obviously, um, a couple of years ago they sort of switched to the alternate logo. And we
Mhm.
had talked about that a while ago. It's here in this room somewhere. I think it's on that hat. But mostly like the iconography of the club, as you can see, just like all around me, if you're watching on YouTube, is just it's it's the old logo. Like that's what it is.
Mhm.
And so a couple years ago they changed to the alt logo and I wasn't super I wasn't a super fan of that. And obviously they started changing that was the logo on their jersey, that was the logo on most of the stuff that they had sold in their store, any of the merchandise.
Mhm.
And they kind of in their branding had started to not use the red part of Red Stars a
Mhm.
lot. We saw it with the hashtags on Twitter with hashtag shy stars and then hashtag with the stars this year. And so we had sort of seen that like
Mhm.
a small rebranding was already happening. Um, I maybe because I didn't want a total rebrand was just sort of like fooling myself thinking that they weren't going to
Mhm.
totally rebrand. But when you kind of go and look back at it, it really was coming for a long time, I think.
A thing that I haven't heard a lot of people touch on with, I guess, sort of both the logo and the name change is what I think they're trying to do, and I could be very wrong about this, but I think what they're trying to do, rather than changing from the Red Stars to the Stars, is changing from the Red Stars to the Chicago Stars, um, which I think also explains the whole like they made this whole point about trying to be more connected to the city, and I heard a lot of people be like, why would you make it less specific? But the concept of the Chicago Star is also like a piece of city iconography, which is usually but not always read like the star within the context of the city. What makes it is not that it's red, but that it's a very specific six-pointed star. It's not your Star of David. It's not two triangles. It sort of comes in a little bit more. It's a little pointier. And that like there are a bunch of pride flags that use the star as a shape but change the color of it. There are various, I don't know, I think there's some random municipal things that likewise have that. And so if they're trying to change it from Red Stars to Chicago Stars, and let that be the name, and then have Stars as sort of the short name in the same way that, like, I don't know, weirdly, I think Seattle was a really good example back in the day when they were very clearly the Seattle Reign as opposed to the Reign before they did all their shit with
Yeah,
Olympic Lyon. But like back
good
then, like
point.
you could call them the Rain sometimes, but they were the Seattle Rain, and it was very clearly like Seattle was part of what you called the club, and I think that's what they're going for here. And I think like getting rid of the red encourages the inclusion of the Chicago, but then also having just stars as opposed to red stars allows them to do some more interesting things with the star itself. They get to, change the colors for Pride Month. They get to, I think in some of the marketing, they like cut out the star and also part of the stripe and we're showing a bunch of like stuff behind it. They get to do that and really emphasize the shape as opposed to the color of it. And I think maybe I don't think, maybe I hope. We'll say I hope that that they're really able to lean into still the very specific Chicago of it, just from a slightly different lens that opens them up to also doing some other stuff like with the stars, which is a pretty cool, like that's a cool concept of a thing that they're doing. It sort of treats the players like stars in a like movie stars type thing. And it just adds a little bit more flexibility for them to do interesting things. And so that's my hope of how they take this forward and how they're able to turn this change into one that like really feels like a positive, we're doing more with this and making it more specific as opposed to making it less specific.
I can see that. I mean, I definitely I think more times than not call the Red Stars Chicago. Like that's just
Mhm,
I don't know. Chicago's always just been the name that I draw to in any sport,
mhm,
really. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. I can see that perspective. The more so just leaning into the city rather than the name.
mhm,
And I get that. And I totally understand the way they could just, use their social media platforms to make their players, be the stars. Like they're a bunch of stars. Like
mhm,
they can sit there and promote every single player as if they're the best because that's what
mhm,
their name is and they're the
mhm,
best. So yeah, I totally get that. And I'm with you in that I hope that they can sort of use this change in like a positive way rather than just saying like, look, we changed it and like
mhm,
that's what we are now and you're just gonna have to get over it. Like I hope I hope they use it in a way that makes it more than just a name change and more an actual like identity culture change with the whole club because the club did need it. It's not like we're not sitting here as people that think that this club is perfect. Like that's not what we're saying when like Liz and I talk about like not wanting this change. The club does need change and I get that. And I think even like the club itself, when they released their statement, the president of the club, Karen Lietzau, she had said, quote, as the stewards of this club, Laura Ricketts, the ownership group, and the leadership team believe that it is time to evolve our identity as a symbol of this new chapter. It is our intent going forward to honor the legacy of past players, fans, and associates while carving a new path for the club and representing Chicago more authentically on and off the pitch. So if that's their goal, I hope that they can succeed in it because the way they like released this, it overwhelmingly was negative. And there are obviously, when you put something out on the internet, it's not always like, you're not always going to see the positive people being able to drown out the voices of the negative. So there could be a lot more people like Jules who has this positive perspective on the change and love for the change that are out there, but like they're not going to be heard, which is why Jules is here because Liz and I were going to sit here and probably just bash this the whole time if we didn't bring Jules in.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree though. I think that people would rather when they go on social media, just in general, would rather they choose to be negative most of the time rather than positive. So the negative is always going to outweigh the positive. And I do think that there were a few people that have a prominent following on social media that take time to make jokes and say things that probably shouldn't be said. And people wanted to take that and run with it with this change. And that's kind of social media. People like to jump on the bandwagon of all the negativity surrounding, especially in the women's soccer community, it feels like. Not going to go into that any further. Anyway, so but yeah, I just think overall I'm fine with it. I'm not happy because I just like the team because of it being an original team. That is my biggest sticking point with it, is that I just like it because it's original. If the players love this and everybody's happy with it, I will eventually get over this. I will be fine. But it's one of those things where it's just like I do like how you brought up that it's a specific star to the city. Like I didn't pay that much attention to the star on the flag and things like that. I just know that the star has the flag has red stars on it. Yeah, I never like paid attention to like what the star looked like until this actually came out. And then people were talking about it. And so I got to learn something. So there's that. But I think just in general, I agree. Back there, we've got the alt logo. I really actually I was one of the very few that actually liked the alternative logo.
Boo.
I know, right? Me being the one that's all like, I want the team to stay the same. I liked it as just an alternate. I thought it was kind of a cool random thing. But that's just me. I don't know. I'm fine with the whole situation with it. I do think that when you think about with the stars is their hashtag, that is a cool way to promote the players. But I don't know. I like the original stuff, but I know that that has ties to the past, and we had to move away from the my kind of town sort of thing and that stuff. But yeah, I'm okay with it. I just am going to sit here and wallow in my sorrows about it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, that was the that was one thing that I remember a couple years ago when I was constantly using the my kind of town sort of and it's even on like the reverse side of that scarf that I have hanging up there. And the reason I don't use the reverse side was because I was very quickly educated on that phrase and I loved that. I think it was Erin Wright when she made her statement about the club and the changes coming to the club had said like it's our kind of town and like it's about the players and they wanted to recapture the what like those what the past meant to them more so than all the negative stuff that had kind of come with it. And I I started using that phrase, the our kind of town, when Aaron was still around, and so I think moving like in that direction once you get sort of educated, like I was, it's like it's important, and like the only thing like you mentioned earlier that I kind of like hold on to is even if the like red stars name is associated with the horrible past that this club does have, at least that name was voted on by fans and selected by fans. Like that, like bringing the community into that so they can name their own club, I think was so important. And I wish that they kind of maybe did something a little more like that this time than just having a internal discussions. And I know they had I know that I saw that they had like input from players
Mhm.
and like focus groups with season ticket members. At least this is what they said. There, I've only seen a, like a couple of people from like 134 talk about how they just showed
Yeah.
them the
Have we
new
seen any
stuff.
players?
So that's the other thing. I like I don't want to like I'm not going to
No.
like speak for the players and like whatever their thoughts are on this. And I don't know if they were just like told not to like overly speak on this or discuss it or whatever. Like we have not, like as a member of the media, we have not had an opportunity to talk to any of the players about any of this
Mhm.
change. We haven't had a any press conferences on this. So but to that point, when all of this rebrand was launching and there was all these social posts about it and stuff, like there were players that were liking the posts, but I didn't see a
Mhm.
single player like post anything about it.
Yeah.
So we don't know their thoughts on it. I don't know if they'll ever give their thoughts. I don't know if they care. They're just, you
Mhm.
know, they're there to do a job
Yeah.
and you know, it doesn't really matter which crest is on their jersey, just as long as, you know, they get to play the sport they love and do it for the city of Chicago.
Yeah. I mean, to quickly go back to the points about the original, it being original team and it being like, and it be like the name being chosen by the fans. One of the things I just want to say is it sucks how much all of this really awesome. I mean, even the phrase "my kind of town," which is such a fantastic phrase for a Chicago team that no one was using. I remember when the team first used it, like I thought it was fucking brilliant. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on this podcast? I
It
think I
doesn't
already
matter.
have, but okay, great. Like I thought it was truly brilliant. Like that's a great, like true Chicago phrase. And also like so much of it was co-opted by the man who I'm not going to name because I don't want to. But like, I mean, I don't know how much either of you interacted with him, and I didn't interact with him terribly much. But at some point, he called, like, at some point after the old coach, who I'm also not going to name, was fired, he called a meeting with 134. And I'm not allowed to get into really details of it, but one of the through lines that he said in that meeting and in a bunch of other stuff with sort of various points of the media and whatnot was he was really emphasizing how strongly like the Red Stars are him. Like the Red Stars are the team that he built, the team that he's been running for years, the team that exists because of him. And I mean, this is the main reason I'm so excited about the rebrand, and was so. I mean, even when we first had these conversations, I was one of the few people who really wanted to move away from that. It there's something to be said about like there's something to be said for reclaiming, and I think a lot of people wanted to do that, and I fully respect that. But there's also something to be said about just moving on and not trying to not trying to let the past continue to like feel the ghosts of that forever or for the next so long, and instead just be like, great, we're going forward, we have some new stuff, we have addressed the problems, or at least many of the problems. I mean, I have talked to players about this. I don't think it's any secret that like the team culture is just better now than it used to be. I really hope I'm not wrong about that. But once those problems are addressed, there's something to be said about just letting that part of our history go, which sucks. There's a lot of great stuff there. And also, I like the Laura Ricketts era and how that has represented like a different set of cultural values. And I like anything that cements this as a true new era. I also want to recognize like I had two interactions with the men. They both really sucked. I really hated them. But there are many people who experienced all of the abuse that he perpetuated and enabled far worse than I did. And obviously, I fully respect their opinions, their perspectives. This is just sort of mine having the few but really, really unpleasant interactions I did with him.
Yeah, the thank you for speaking on that, Jules. That is one of the many reasons why I wanted you to be on this episode. I had hoped that you would bring up that what you had experienced.
Mhm.
And I know there are so many people in this community that have either been here from the founding of the club, had been here since the beginning of its NWSL era, or even the last few years, or even just this year. There are so many people that have so many different perspectives on many different aspects of this club, whether it be the logo, the name, the players, the stadium, the ownership, the marketing, the merchandise, whatever. Like it, everyone has like their own experiences. Mine, for me, like I've been a fan of this club for a pretty short time compared to so many of the other people that I've gotten to speak to and to know. I've only been a fan of this club or even known about this club in its like full purview since 2019. I have not had like the same experiences as people that have been around for so long, and I've only like ever since I started this whatever Red Stars report is the only time that I've in that short like 2 3 year period is when I've actually been involved in the club, and especially just this past year being able to speak to players, interview players, and then really get into talking about this club with so many different members of this community. So I appreciate and I respect every single thing that anybody from any era of this club has to say on this point, and I hope that there are people who are all for this rebrand and people who are against this rebrand that down the line we can all just continue to love this club and continue to just you know have discussions about way more important things like getting a stadium in the city. And then obviously a big discussion that has been happening over the last couple of years has always been players safety, players health, and all that. So yeah, thank you, Jules, for sharing your perspective. I know you've been
Of
around
course.
and so heavily involved in this team, especially on the supporter group side for a long time.
Ooh. Support your local.
Support your local,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate it too. I appreciate that perspective and hearing from that. Yeah, I've been a fan of the team since it's been created, but I'm not from there. I can't go to the games all the time, so it's tough. And so I appreciate that perspective. And that's the thing, like you talked about like taking back the team and like that, like the rebrand instead of rebranding, like just taking that name back and making it like the Red Stars instead of I'll say his name, Arnhems. And so um that my whole thing is it was never his. And I hate that he tries to say that it was because it wasn't. Like this team
Mhm.
is so many players from the past that are fantastic humans. And they're like we've always jokingly said, like, name a player and they probably were a Red Star. Like so many players have passed through this club and been part of this. And I hope that most of them did not experience awful situations. And so with that being said, that's where I'm at with it. I'm like, I like that it's an original, but I also get the change. I do understand it. but that doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I even think like not, do you guys, either of you have seen Ted Lasso, the show?
Only I haven't watched the last two seasons, but yes.
So there's obviously the previous owner of the club in that show is a very narcissistic person, obviously based on owners of clubs that have existed for a very long time. And his perspective on the club, even though he's not the owner of it anymore, is always that it's my club, whatever. And that is how that era felt um, to me. And I totally get how, changing the entire branding of it could pull away from that person looking back at the success of the club now and continuing to say that it's theirs because there's no identity to what it was when they were in charge of it. So I can understand that, and I can get behind that. It's gonna take me a little bit to do. I can see both sides. Like I'm still struggling with the with the logo. I like the like sort of alt logo that they've released with like just the ball and the name in the middle and stuff. Like I can get behind that. It's just like the crest that kind of does it for me that I need to see it like 1,000 more times before I can really
Is that the
safely.
thing with the weird, awkward diagonal?
Yeah, yeah,
The
Okay.
that's a
diagonal
meme.
is weird.
Yeah, the shield, it's like the words are off centered, the diagonal's strange.
I will say, having done some graphic design stuff, the words are off center because that's how that's the size of
Oh,
the
yeah,
letters,
I
and it would
mean,
also look
look at my
so
logo.
it looks so weird. I swear, I've seen edits that put the A in the center, and I swear it looks weirder.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a me thing, but I swear it looks so weird with the A in the center.
If
Yeah,
nobody would have said a
I
word,
get
I
it.
wouldn't have noticed. So
Yeah, I saw someone even say that the FC is off center, which is kind of annoying.
That I don't know. If the FC is off center, that I can't say anything about.
But yeah,
I
like
will.
I mean, like look at the Red Stars report logo. Like the
Yeah.
lettering is not centered because the curvature is centered. Like
Mhm.
it's how words and fonts work. Like that's I understand it. But yeah, they so like it'll take me some time to get used to like the logo aspect. It'll take me some time to get used to the names. I'm so used to starting this show mentioning the Chicago Red Stars name, and that's gonna have to change next season or whenever they actually do the full launch of the actual rebrand. I don't know if during the off season I can still call them the Red Stars. I'm not quite sure.
I mean, there's also something to be said. This is Chicago. I have not called it anything other than the Sears Tower a day in my life, and I never
Yep.
will. Born and raised there, it's the Sears Tower. And and I haven't even decided what I'm going to do. I've still been weighing things. I've mostly been calling it Chicago lately. But like, if everyone decides they're going to keep calling it the Red Stars, and that's what the fan community wants to do, unless we hear from like the players saying that makes them super uncomfortable, I think that's great, and I think that's a fantastic. I think that is a great way for the community to reclaim the name as our own while still letting the image and identity of the club move forward. So, like, I recognize you're in an interesting position as someone who has a slightly more official platform. But I don't think
Yeah.
anyone's going to be mad if people call it the Red Stars. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't
it's
think
just
so
gonna be
either.
hard.
If anybody is questioning it, Red Stars Report is not changing its name, and that has nothing to do with like this is not a protest to to the name change. This name is just it has a lot of meaning for me, and a couple other uh parts of my life that like this is I don't know this is what Red Stars Report is its own thing. Like it may have that share the name with the club, but it's entirely separate. So I'm not going to be changing the name anytime soon.
It's also not incorrect because the star is still red.
The star is still red.
There's four of
The
them
star
on
is
this
absolutely
logo.
still red. Yeah.
All I'm asking with the rebrand, I want one thing from ownership. One thing. Get us a red kit.
No.
I
I
want
We
knew
it
are a
this.
so
blue
bad.
team.
I
We
knew
have
this
been
was
a
coming
blue
up.
team since the beginning. We are a
We
blue
need
team
it.
that has a red
No,
star.
we need to have a red kit. I need it in my life so bad.
I told you,
I would
Jules,
immediately buy it. Immediately.
the red socks are
Poppin'.
amazing.
I will allow the socks.
Poppin'.
The socks are fantastic. The socks look great, but the
Every
socks look great
game.
because they're against the blue.
That's
Okay,
true.
what if they
What if it
did
was a
red
red kit and
kit,
blue socks?
blue socks?
No, because the background of the Chicago flag is a blue flag with red stars on it.
I just want it. Can it be like an alternate kit that we wear like twice?
Special occasion kit,
Special occasion kit.
like
I'm
the
so
NFL
excited for
does.
when this league gets third kits. Third kits are
Oh, that
gonna
would be
go so
great.
hard.
I love third kits. I
I
buy so many
adore
third
third
kits.
kits.
If it was
Third
a
kits
red
are
one, I'd
always the
buy it.
best.
They are
I
always the
would.
best because they get the most creative with them.
Yeah, there
I'll
are
be
no rules
curious.
about a third kit.
That's my thing. I will have very high expectations with a rebrand like this of what the kits are going to look like. But I
Mhm,
believe that are we stuck with these for a year or something like
We're
that?
stuck
Did
with
somebody say?
the blue ones, the home primary kits, those will still be the main primary kit in 2025. Obviously,
mhm.
they're gonna have to swap the logo
Oh,
on the chest. And
and
then the like dark blue gradient, whatever.
Generic.
mhm,
Yeah, the
yeah.
generic that every club has, those are all changing in 2025. And then those will stay for 2 years. The following year, 2026, the primaries will change. Like that's what the Nike deal says. It's
High expectations.
every other
High
Oh
year.
yeah.
expectations.
Yeah. So if they have this idea of connecting more with the city,
Mhm.
Chicago's kits have always been super,
Chicago has never
super,
made a bad kit.
they are so identifiable with the city and what the city means. Every kit has always been like the meaning behind every kit has always been so Chicago that if
Mhm.
their new branded, new name, new whatever team comes out with a kit that doesn't feel like Chicago, it's going to be very disappointing.
Oh, that's gonna be awful. That I will riot at.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll see
I
what
can't wait
happens
till the red
with
kit
the
comes
kit.
out.
Yeah,
I do
then
expect to be back to give my comments on the kit when that launches.
oh,
I will have
Jules,
many.
you are more than welcome to join us on our kit review episode.
Whenever
Excellent.
you want to join us, please
Yeah,
feel
that too.
free.
You
Oh, thank you.
anytime you want to join, you're more than welcome to. We've like I said, Jules is a founding member of the Red Stars Report community. Jules always was in the post-match chats that I would always host. That's kind of where the community sort of formed with people like Jules, like Liz, like Cheryl, like Noah, like the core of the Red Stars report was Jules as well. So this is great to have Jules on as our first like guest that isn't replacing a host that can't do it like Liz was until we made Liz the permanent host.
Or like an actual player. Don't forget
Or an
that you've
actual
had players
player.
on as guests.
Yes, of course. I meant more so the
Yeah, no, I know.
um the guest that we just had on because we didn't want to sit here and have one perspective the whole time.
Wah wah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, but thank you
Some
again
quick
for
comments.
quick
Oh, sorry.
comments. Go ahead. No, go
Some
ahead.
quick comments also on the design of the crest. The top little swooshy, curvy thing, as well as the lettering of Chicago, is designed mostly after the old Chicago Theater and also slightly after Wrigley.
Yeah, I
Another
saw
nice
that.
touch that I don't know if everyone knows about, but I think is stunning as, again, native Chicagoan who's also involved in theater.
Yeah, and don't forget that the ball represents soccer, as as we have been informed by the club. The soccer ball represents Soccer.
Well, after Boss Nation, I think that
Yeah.
it had to be stated.
I think that's where I am sitting with this is it's not as bad as Boss Nation, and
Oh
that's
God,
cool.
no.
I'm totally cool
My
with that.
partner is from the Boston area and was so excited for that team and the crest, like this the demo crest that they had when they were still NWSL Boston was stunning. And then Boss Nation dropped, and I swear she was just like, I don't know if I could support this team. This is so
Oh
bad.
man.
It's awful. That's the thing. I've heard that from a few people, and it's just like,
Mhm.
ooh, that's I haven't heard a single Red Star Chicago Stars FCC. I did it already. I call them the Red Stars. That's just what
That's
I always
fine.
say.
That's
And
fine.
so, but I got to catch myself. It's going to be tough to
Mhm.
change because I never call them just Chicago. But anyway, I've heard so many people, like, I've not seen a single person say that they're going to stop being a Chicago fan. I've not seen that. I've seen numerous people say, I'm going to stay a Gotham fan or whatever they were before instead of being a Boss
Yep.
Nation because that's ridiculous.
Oh,
That is bad. Yeah,
their
so at
colors are
least
cute.
it's are they though?
I like them.
It's very
I
Halloweeny.
it's fine. It reminds me of Wicked, so that's where I'm at with
Oh,
it.
that's a good point.
Yeah. Boston Coven FC. It was right there.
The
Yeah,
Boston Wiccans.
that would be interesting.
Oh, geez. Yeah,
Boston
let's
Witch Trial.
Oh my.
we'll we'll talk about Boss Nation some other time in detail.
Oh, yeah, we've yet to really hit on that one.
We'll save it for the off season whenever they start actually doing things.
Yeah.
You can join us back, Jules, for that one.
I will happily join back for Boss Nation.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks again, Jules, for giving their perspective on the changes that are happening with Chicago. With that, we'll wrap things up for this week. You can, make sure that you're subscribed to us and have your alerts set on for all the different places you listen to your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a like. That really helps us out and helps us reach more fans of the club. Make sure that you're also following us on all of our social media platforms at Red Stars Report to keep up with the latest news between the episodes. Don't forget to join our Discord with the link in the description. Jules is in that Discord. It's a great place to be. If you enjoyed everything that Jules was saying, go chat with Jules in the Discord where everyone's there. I'm there. Liz is there. It's a great time. Next week, Chicago will be playing Kansas City for the last game of the regular season. So we'll be discussing that and however that turns
Don't lose.
out. And then also
Please don't
previewing
lose.
and then also previewing the first round of the playoffs. So we'll see you next week for another Red Stars report.